Hi, my name is Patrick Dawson. I'm the production director for World of Warcraft.
So Patrick, what's it been like working on Dragonflight these last few years and finally you're getting people are playing it for the first time in an alpha? Like what's like people finally see this game in action?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a labor of love for the team to, explore this fantastical world of dragons. I mean, it's like the iconic piece of World of Warcraft lore and history. And yeah, this alpha is something special, I think, too, because traditionally in the past we've had earlier sneak peeks at the game, like say at like a BlizzCon with an early demo build or something that people could, latch onto and just kind of see where we were at. And this has been unusual. This is the first time we've really showed it for the first time ever at alpha. So really excited to get it out there in the hands of players and start getting some feedback on how it's going.
We talk about the new flight mechanic you have in this game is really interesting. WoW, as far as I can tell, the only kind of physics you have in the game are when a player jumps. Like that's really the only real-time physics in the game. But this, I don't know if you guys are cheating it or you guys figured it out, but it feels like it's real physics. It feels like Mario with the feather cape, like how you glide and do this. And can you talk about that process?
Yeah, that was one of the first things we wanted to solve, right? Like, let's get this to feel good, like viscerally just feel good from a gameplay perspective before we start to integrate it more with rewards and content and how that works. So yeah, there was a team of designers, artists, engineers, and producers all working together just to get that right. So we've been working on that feature for quite some time. We've been working on the game for quite some time. So that group that was their job, make this feel fun. So what you're seeing in the alpha is the results of that effort. It wasn't meant to be like some exercise in physics. It really was just meant to make dragon riding just feel good and normal and fun. And that's what they've been working on, and you see it already.
I was playing the alpha yesterday and I kind of got sidetracked. I just flew around for like a couple hours just because it felt so more engaging than just pressing spacebar, holding W, or unlocking and having go to the movement and was really addictive, and it felt good to dash and flap and all that good stuff.
Well, and it's a big world too, and that's one of the reasons why we made it quite so big. Like this first zone you see, Azure Span, it's so vast and large. Like dragon riding is a great way to get around in the zone and really navigate those areas. And you could get lost for hours, just like you. It sounds like you did. So, yeah.
Do you think Dragonflight will eventually replace the standard flying you currently have in retail WoW?
Well, right now the plans are just really to have it in the Dragon Isles and see how that feels. But yeah, I mean, let's see how it goes. Let's get some feedback on it. And you never know what the future holds, but right now it's really meant to be a Dragon Isle specific feature.
Now, going back to Cataclysm, which was your very first expansion that basically featured the aspects as the key players, what did you learn specifically from that storyline with the aspects, and what did you bring over to Dragonflight, which it's also revolves around the different dragon aspects?
Yeah, I think one of the core takeaways from both experiences is that the community really resonates with dragon-based lore in the game. Like, there's lots of really good stories to tell. Dragons are iconic. They're cool. They've always been part of World of Warcraft. And now we get to explore what the next chapter of that is. So just seeing how people engage with Cataclysm and then now how they're going to engage with Dragonflight, the excitement is pretty high. And I love that. I love when we can hit those key strings of the community that they just want to see content for, and we're delivering on that.
And with this, you guys are adding a new race and a new hero class. So I made sure to call it a hero class because you start a higher level.
Yes.
Can you talk about how that affects your ecosystem? Because I know there's a lot of people who found their fist on the table. They want a new class every expansion, but I know there's a ton that goes into it in terms of balancing what works, the combinations with arena and raiding. And it's a very, I'm sure it's a very complicated process when you add a new class into this ecosystem.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we want to be very careful when we do add stuff like new classes. I think when we took a look at this expansion and what it meant, offering the ability to play as a dragon-like creature was just something we had to do. I mean, it's just so cool of a fantasy and concept that we really wanted to make sure we did that. But yeah, it is hard to balance, and we want to make sure it brings something different too, right? And so with the Drakthir, we're introducing them as a healer and also a mid-range caster class, which is something we haven't really tried before. The idea behind that is some of their spells are a little shorter range, and that makes some sense from the dragon fantasy. If you have like breath attacks, you're not going to be way in the back of the room. You're going to be a little bit closer. But this is, I think this might be the first range class we've ever introduced since launch. So this is a kind of a nice way to round out the class balance in terms of what we brought on since then. So that was something that I'm excited about too. Actually, one other thing that's going to make this a little bit easier for us too is the revisit to the talent system. Because now that we're going back and reimagining how talents work in the game, that's sort of almost a rebase for a lot of classes in terms of balance, options, choices, etc. So there's already a lot of work we had to do for that. It provides a good opportunity to introduce a new class like the Dracthyr Evoker into that ecosystem without having to work it into the existing stuff, since we're all kind of, okay, let's reimagine what the base class gameplay is.
Speaking of the talent system in general, you guys redid the talents a while ago, and and a lot of people were angry about it. Some people were happy, just in like regular, half people are happy, half people are mad. I personally like them because there was no more, sorry, you can't come in our group, you're built wrong. Do you anticipate having that issue again, bringing back the point talent system that's so intricate about like trying to get into raids or arena groups and saying, oh, sorry, you did put this 1 point in this other thing and not this one thing, so you can't join our party?
Yeah, I think, so a couple thoughts on that. One of the things I really like about this is that you do get like a point every level. It makes levels feel a lot more meaningful, especially as you're going all the way from 1 to 70. There's something new to get and to look forward to every time, instead of these breakpoints at 5, 10, 15 levels. But in terms of the min-max nature of it, I think we have some options around that right now too. Like we're doing a talent loadout system so that based on the content you want to play, you can quickly switch back and forth between the way you want to play that content. So you can have a different loadout for Mythic Plus versus raiding or PvP or even outdoor world content. And they may all be very different in terms of how you want to play, but that's your choice. That's up to you. For those players that maybe don't want to go that deep into the system, we also have a default talent loadout, something that you could choose to say, I don't want to necessarily have to worry about all that stuff. I just want to be a mage or a warlock or an evoker, and give me what you think is reasonable talents, and those will be plenty for you to make it through any of the content we have in the game today.
Now I've maxed several classes out, not all the classes, but a lot of the classes. And when I played the Invoker in this alpha, especially with the Devastation, I believe is the spec, yes, it was so interactive. I was holding buttons to charge things, and I was pushing people away, and I was like, there was some movement shenanigans. It's kind of like you took the best of a demon hunter and a mage and kind of mushed them together.
Well, I think the Evoker is giving us an opportunity to experiment a little bit more with some gameplay mechanics. You mentioned the empowered casting. That's something that's new with Dragonflight. We haven't tried that before with other classes, and the Evoker gives us an opportunity to do that. So for people not familiar with empowered casting, what that is your cast bar has different breakpoints along the way. So you can hold down the bar to charge up your spell more. Maybe it makes it do more damage, or in some cases, maybe it makes a ground target slightly larger, or your area of effect hits more targets. And you can imagine in different combat settings that might be useful. Like if you're healing and your raid spread out, the heal circle might be bigger, but if you're closely clumped, it's better to cast it more quickly, get that heal off, and move on to the next spell. Same with area of effect spells and damaging spells. There's different situations where you might want to use a smaller cast versus a larger one. So the important thing is, that's cool, that's new. Let's see how it works out, and then we can talk about how maybe we can integrate that elsewhere in the game. But for now, the Evoker's the place to be if you want to try that style of gameplay.
I'm telling you, it feels great. I mean, I've never been much of a caster person, but it feels really great, and especially I think interactive and engaging would be the words I choose, because it's not just hitting your button rotations. You add another step, but it's a fun step. You're charging it, making it feel powerful, and even the bar like changes colors the longer you hold it, so it actually feels like you're doing more damage as you hold the button to take that deep breath in and exfoliate out.
Yeah, the moment-to-moment gameplay of all the classes is very, very good. Like the decisions that you have to make is fun, but this adds another dimension. I think that's really the exciting part about the empowered casting to me, is like now you have another set of criteria you can use to make a decision on how to cast a spell, when to cast a spell, and now how long to cast the spell.
If this is received positively, will we see this mechanic work its way into possible other classes like Death Knight or Mage or Demon Hunter?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities there. It's really going to be, let's evaluate how it's working for Evoker in like a live setting first, and then we can look at opportunities in the future that make sense for some of the other classes.
You guys also did a very phenomenal job on the customization options of the Draketheer. They're very in depth. Like I can change scales on my face, on my body. I can change the fins on my neck, on my back. The tail options blew me away. It made me so jealous that they got a tail option and the Worgen don't have a tail option. But I mean, I loved the tail options. I was like, that's something that you didn't have to do, but it certainly adds that sense of character identity.
Yeah, there's enough combinations out there for Drakthyr that I think every player in the world could have their own unique combination with orders of magnitude to spare. So yeah, there's so many options to customize your Drakthyr. I mean, this really has been an ongoing effort for us over time. In the past few expansions, we've increased character customization options over time so that you can actually, for all the other characters, have them represent yourself a little bit better too. To different hairstyles, different racial options like body types, etc. And Drakthyr is another situation where you can really customize your character in a very deep way.
Now, what are the challenges when doing that? Because you have this whole back catalog of raid gear and just items that characters wear: shoulder pads, helms, boots, weapons. And when you make a new race, you have to make sure that all of that works without having to redo everything. Like, how does that process work to make sure everything fits on the character model correctly and looks good?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard. Yeah, this is a difficult task, but you know, this team has some of the best artists, some of the best engineers and designers that I've ever worked with. I think they're some of the best in the industry, and some of the creative solutions that they come up with are fantastic. And I think you'll see in game all of those items look fantastic on all of our races and classes, and couldn't be more proud of what the team's been able to pull off there.
Now, the game is 18 years old, and I say this every time I talk to one of you devs. It's so impressive how long this game has gone, and how you continue to build top of that code, because the world was a lot different in 2004. Video game technology was a lot different in 2004, but you guys are continually finding new ways to improve the game and make it a better experience without having to wipe everything and make WoW 2, which is one of the arguments of the community. Make WoW 2. It's like, why, if they can keep adding on and increasing things? Can you talk about some of the roadblocks you hit because the game is so old and you're building on top of code after code after code, and getting these new mechanics in and these new assets in and all that good stuff?
Yeah, you know, it's surprising to me, because it's always one of the big myths I've heard about the game is that, oh, it's this old game that is this 2004 thing. It's not. We've reinvented the game so often through expansions and content updates that we've done. You know, I think if you brought somebody in who worked on the game in 2004, they barely recognize the source code now. It's very different. It's just grown leaps and bounds. It's very modern. So I'm really proud of that. The team's been able to keep up with that very, very well. But with that actually comes a pretty powerful thing too, which is we have 18 years of content for players to enjoy. And we see the players engage with this content in various ways. I mean, yes, there's this new world of dragons to go explore. We want everyone to go do that, and I know everyone will. That's awesome. But one of the things about WoW is you can play the game however you want. There's different achievements and goals and objectives that you can set for yourself on how you want to play it. And maybe you want to be that mount collector, and that requires you going back to some of the old raids and doing those, or going through some of the old zones, or farming different things. That's available to you. There's 18 years of stuff available to you to go and do that. Or if you're very interested in doing the new things, you have this whole new world to explore with Dragon Isles, which was one of the biggest continents we've ever done. In fact, I think it may be the biggest continent we've ever done in an expansion. So you'll have the ability to go through and play all this new stuff too. So there's something for everybody, and that's one of the things that I love about this game.
Now, in terms of story, we're going to obviously explore why the dragons are waking up this time and why the statues and the island's activation. We're also going to find out what eventually happens. Like, are we going to finish this Sylvanas' story arc in this expansion as well? Are we going to briefly glance on that?
Well, I do want to preserve some level of mystery still. In fact, that's one of the things that is a core tenet of this alpha, and maybe it's something a little different than what you've seen before, is there will be parts of the story that we're not revealing during the alpha and beta playtests, the stuff that you will only discover when you're on live. As for Sylvanas specifically, you know, you'll have to wait and see, but I know she's very busy right now doing her penance in the mall, collecting those souls. So yeah, I think she's a little bit taken right now. So, but we'll see what the future holds.
What's been the most exciting thing you've seen, either family and friends beta or the closed alpha, that people have experienced with Dragonflight?
Well, for me personally, it's actually, I can relate to what you were saying earlier about the Evoker and the empowered spellcasting. I've really been enjoying playing around with that and the different situations that I find myself in, on how that class feels and how that class plays. So um, I've definitely been enjoying that. I mean, as for the alpha itself, I think friends and family has been good, just to kind of get people into the world and just see them like enjoy this large place to explore. But I'm actually very excited about the public alpha and how we're really focusing specific pieces of content out, one week at a time, to really focus on, hey, what's the Azure span feel like? Let's get some specific feedback on this before we move on to the next thing, and get specific feedback on that. So it's just a little different philosophy, and I'm excited to work through this process with the community.
The Drake there have this amazing racial ability, or class. It might be a racial, might be a class ability called Soar. And when I figured that out in the alpha, I'm like, man, if I would have had that ability like during my 15 years of playing this game, it would have made my life so much easier to be able to leap in the air like 100 feet, then glide to my objective instead of having to fight my way through mobs around, up the hill. I love that ability. Do you think we'll see more of that, those mobile abilities? Because I know demon hunters can glide, priests can levitate, and like mages can feather fall, but this is the first time you've had a class that can actually like fly. Like, and I say that like this because they shoot up and then they glide down. But like, what went into that decision, like to actually have them fly in a way?
Yeah, well, overall, you mentioned quite a few different abilities about this, but movement mechanics are fun. And Drakthir gives us a unique opportunity to play with those. I mean, they have wings, so you have to do something, right? Like, let's experiment with it and play around with it. So, but yeah, I know what you mean. I know, as I typically play a mage in the game, and slow falling myself from the lumber mill at Arathi Base into the blacksmith is one of the most fun, iconic things that I've done with movement. But let's see what players come up with in terms of ways that they're going to interact with the soar mechanic, and how that's going to help them in different encounters, or even in the outdoor world or exploration. There's lots of cool things to do when you soar.
That plays into your design a lot. When you want it, when you add a new class, you want it to be vastly different than any other class. You play a mage, so there's certain builds where they just require you to not move. You just want to stay there as long as you can and not move unless you absolutely have to. And the invoker is exact opposite of that. It sounds like you want to be moving constantly and spell casting, which is interesting for a class similar to a hunter, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know, like in my Mythic Plus group, it's hard to keep my eyes on my rogue because they're always moving. They don't even need to; they just do it because it's fun. So.
Oh yeah, the melee classes always like to go back and forth, and you're always like, wait, I want you to click casters in the back. Let me stand here on my power rune, and I'll just hit him. Just keep him over there.
Yeah, mage with certainly if you're using Rune of Power, you're kind of rooted to that location. I mean, there's fights where that is fantastic on, and other fights where it's a little frustrating. But actually, that's one of the fun things about things like the talent loadout system, where if you're going into a raid that requires a lot of movement, maybe you choose a different talent for that, and you can say, oh, I'm doing this Mythic Plus today, so I'm gonna go for the more mobile spec versus the more stationary spec. So that's another thing we looked at when we looked at the talent system.
And do you have any plans for maybe making a glyph or having options for people to stay in their humanoid Drakthir form when they're casting and healing, or do they have to be similar to Worgen? Do they have to be in dragon form or they're casting spells and healing?
Yeah, we really built the class around you doing combat in your dragon form. So we're not going to provide a glyph at this time to change anything like that. A lot of it, is things like, wing buffets, tail whips, breath attacks that don't make sense if you're in your visage form. So it's really meant to be done, in the Drakthir form.
And then in terms of leveling, you guys did like a really massive level up redesign of like years and years and years ago, where people could kind of go wherever they wanted and start the chain wherever they wanted, not have to go through A through Z exactly. Like with the Shadowlands, it was each covenant was its own kind of level up zone you could do it at the beginning. How will you level up on the Dragon Isles? It will be a similar way. You'll be dropped into one of 4 zones, play the zone, move on to the next zone. Yeah,
the narrative will be linear. You're going to go through each zone in order. And a lot of that's because you're going to, like, the way we're telling the story is you're meeting different dragon aspects and dragon flights during each zone and helping them with certain things. And then you'll also meet some other characters that are not draconic in nature, right? Like you'll meet the Tuskar, the Centaur, which aren't related to the Azerothian Centaur, so they're very different. You'll learn about their culture and history too. Gnolls, you'll meet some of them as adversaries predominantly. So, but yeah, there's lots of different cultures you'll meet along the way. But Yeah, it's going to be done in a very, you go through each zone one at a time to get to the story and finally to the culmination.
And then I know people are, they're always finding their if it's not for a new class, for new races. Can you talk about like what goes into just adding a new race, not even a class, like just adding a new model into the game? Like, as people have been asking for I think they're called the ethereal, the ones that the bandage wrap mummies, the Tuskar people. These are races people would love to play. Like do you have any plans for that, or like what goes into deciding adding a new race, just a race, like not a class?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it does seem a little confusing to players sometimes, where it's like, well, why can't we just play as this character? They're already in the game. I see them in the game, but a new race involves not only a new character model, but there's like an animation rig that has to be created for that character, and then the animations need to be done for that, the texturing, the skinning, the customization. There's a ton of work that goes into those things. And then when it comes to things like the animation, a lot of those NPCs that you see that are in the world don't have all the animations that a player has. So you would need to do a lot of work to do like not only variant spellcasting, but different crafting animations, a lot of stuff like that. So a tremendous amount of effort goes into creating this stuff. Then there's also voicing the characters. You have to be able to, the character gives voice feedback lines from time to time or talks, and there's a lot of work that goes into casting and recording those things as well. So quite a bit goes into making a new character race.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed in the alpha, like, you don't have the Draethier voice lines in yet. So I'm like, the first thing I did was like LOL and joke, and I'm like, damn, they're not in yet. That's the first thing I tried because I wanted to hear them. But like, it all comes down to that character identity.
Mm-hmm.
And then Patrick, as my two more questions. Second last question is, if you were a dragon aspect, what aspect would you be and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's so many good ones. I would probably be myself, blue. And the reason why is there's sort of those masters of arcane magic. And earlier I told you I played a mage for a very long time. I've played many classes, but mage is kind of my core class fantasy that I identify with. And blue dragons feel very arcane magic-like. So that definitely draws me to them. Plus, I really like the color blue, so that doesn't hurt either. But for different people, I think they're going to find different things that they draw themselves toward. And for me, it's blue.
Perfect. And then when can the public have access to the alpha, beta, and when do you have a release date yet for Dragonflight? It's this year or is it next year? Like, give us some insight where people can give us a roadmap.
Yeah, so we're looking to release it by the end of the year. I think that's something we announced with pre-sales, so we're on track to do that. And the alpha starts tomorrow, and we'll go through the alpha process as normal. The alpha process is a little more compressed than what we've done in the past. In the past, it's usually been 2.5-3 months before we get to a beta. I think now we're looking at a little more compressed time frame, and that's just so that we don't have those downtime periods in the alpha, and we can really focus the feedback of the testing on each piece of content that we want tested. So that's what we're looking like for a release by the end of the year.